How did Plo Koon come to be considered one of the most powerful Jedi on the High Council? An astounding feat, considering he's up against the likes of Windu and Grandmaster Yoda, as well as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Kit Fisto. The ranks of the Jedi High Council are home to many of the most accomplished Jedi Masters in the Order during their respective eras. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan would earn seats on the Council due to their accomplishments during the Clone War, as well as for their mastery of the Force. But each and every member of the council would have earned their spot in their own unique way. One such member would be the fan favorite Plo Koon, who quickly distinguishes himself from the rest of the Jedi due to his compassionate and fatherly nature towards everyone around him. During the war, Plo Koon was loved by his soldiers and absolutely feared by the enemy. He was not only considered one of the best Jedi, but also one of the greatest militaristic minds of the era. Plo Koon had a legendary reputation within the Order, as many saw him in being close in power and wisdom to that of Yoda, perhaps even matching or surpassing Mace Windu. In today's holocron, we're going to pay our respects to the Keldor Jedi Master, the man who refused to allow the clones to be disposable, who found Ahsoka Tano, and who is undoubtedly one of the most powerful Jedi on the Council. So, let's begin. When discussing one's natural talent in the Force, it is always worth looking into their bloodline and their family history. Despite what some may claim, family does matter when concerning aptitude with the Force, especially raw power. It just so happens that the Koon family is historically very gifted in the Force. Some of them have become Jedi in days earlier, but many of them were what is known as the Barandu Sages. The Sages is a group of Force wielders that were basically on the ruling council of the planet of Doran. Due to the world being prone to deadly storms, the Barandu Sages used the power of foresight and the Force to predict when the storms would occur, allowing their people to prepare or leave. They also enforced the strict laws of Doran, which is spending their time looking into as many strange abilities of the light side of the Force as possible. It had been assumed before that Plo Koon himself had spent some time training with the Barandu Sages, as they speak very highly of the Jedi Master, and Plo echoes their teachings in the Jedi Order. He was very level-headed, calm, known for his quick thinking and decisive action. The Keldor species held fast to the light side, so much so that they had a very black and white view on morality. To them, goodness was the standard, and any wrong action, no matter what the motive was behind it, was to be harshly punished. Plo was known for being able to make decisions on a situation with extreme ease and clarity, not having to take a whole lot of time to think about it and what was the right course of action. Plo Koon was driven by morals, which aligned nicely to the Jedi Code. As far as Jedi go, this was exactly what the Order was looking for in a master. Keeping tight to the code, Plo Koon essentially made himself the perfect Jedi by the Republic Classic era's standard. Yet, through all of that, Plo Koon remained compassionate and caring for those around him. The one thing that Plo would have stumbled upon, though, according to Jedi standards, was just as much as he cared for people in his charge, more than was common for the Jedi of this era. His compassion caused him to always attempt to save as many clone troopers as possible. This made a huge impact, as the members of Wolf Squadron and Wolf Pack had the least casualties of any battalion. Plo Koon greatly rewarded bravery and loyalty while honoring sacrifice. But even with how connected he was to his friends and his troopers, he knew his duty came before everything. And even when his Jedi Master Tyvaka and his best Plo Koon did not allow his emotions to take over and hinder his ability to complete the mission. In both events, he would go on to take part in or lead an entire army to victory immediately after this. And yet, despite all of his compassion, Plo Koon never hesitated to do what was necessary against those who wield the dark side for evil. We mentioned all of this to support the fact that while he was truly a man who understood the light side, the dark side has its true way, and there is a true way in the balance of the two. But just like Luke Skywalker, Plo Koon knew that the true way of the light, which is a rarity to see, especially in a time of Yoda, in an era where even the Grand Master was stumbling with his views and making all sorts of mistakes, but knowing how to operate honestly within the light side, giving Plo Koon clarity and light beyond the Jedi Order. This allowed him all sorts of new avenues to power, which we are now going to discuss in detail. It were not these character traits that made Plo Koon as famous among the Jedi as he was, but his power in the Force and his skill with the lightsaber. Let us begin. Plo Koon was known specifically for his strength in one ability, telekinesis. In fact, he was considered to be one of the most powerful wielders of the technique in the entire Order, up there with Yoda. He was able to push or move objects without even having to look at them. He didn't actually need to witness it. If it was an object or a person, he could sense them and then move them at will with ease. What many do not understand about telekinesis is that it requires a certain amount of focus and buildup, but Plo Koon could crush large objects with ease. What's interesting is many wielders of the Force do not employ more telekinesis or force-based attacks in their blade work because their attention is split between moving their lightsaber, examining the battle, and keeping their awareness sharp. Because of this, using force-based attacks takes a moment or two of focus in order to build up that power to exert it. Even Anakin Skywalker had to take a moment to build up his focus when fighting Barriss Offee in the Jedi Temple. While moving in the battlefield, Plo Koon, however, was able to sharpen his focus instantly, exert force pushes at will at very large objects. We actually see him do this a lot in the Clone Wars with the spider droids, doing it without breaking a sweat. He could collapse a tunnel with only the gesture of a hand, something that most Jedi would have to stop and do with 2 hands while using a ton of focus. Also around this time, we saw him create solid barriers using the Force, which he used to protect himself and his squad against an entire avalanche, a feat on the level of Darth Vader. And if you needed an idea of an exact potency of his telekinesis, he was able to break down the Force wall of Ventress twice. The first time was to disarm her of a remote detonator that she wore on her belt, and he performed this first feat while they were dueling. The second time was a Force push. Why this is notable is Ventress is established as a very powerful Force wielder of this era. At her best, it has required those such as Yoda, Dooku, and the combined might of Anakin and Obi-Wan to break through her Force shield. But Plo Koon did it easily. But his skills in the Force went far beyond his legendary telekinesis, obviously. In the realm of the mind, Plo Koon was more than a student. Being of the Keldor species, their extrasensory organs have a certain telepathy property to them, which is amplified of course through the Force. Much like the Barandu sages, Plo Koon's future sight is always on point, even if he doesn't consider himself to be much of a Jedi seer. Although, he does fit all qualifications for one. He is able to sense the intentions and hidden plans of an enemy, ascertaining if they had a secret weapon that they were waiting to use. But he was also skilled with the mind and the mind trick. He once used the power of the mind trick to disperse an entire group of protesters that had arrived at the Jedi Temple. Along with this, he was able to help restore Aayla Secura's memories after she lost them for a time after being drugged. And finally, one of his more impressive feats of the mind was how he was able to convey entire messages through telepathy, sending them over vast distances. Whereas most Jedi can only convey feelings or intentions into the minds of others, Plo Koon was able to make a link that could sustain an entire conversation. He did this with a military commander, and then to his niece, Sha Koon, from across the stars, executing this far beyond a planetary level. Moving from Force powers for just a moment, we also want to talk about Plo Koon's skill with the lightsaber, obviously. This is another category where Plo Koon earned his reputation, and it preceded him. His chosen style was Gem So or Shien, Form 5. Proficient at both, he preferred Gem So in his personal style, exercising what Luke would later say was the proper way to use the aggression in the form. As Luke put it, with compassion. In one instance, Plo Koon managed to injure Savage Opress in a duel before his mask was snatched off of his face. Plo Koon also once fended off Ventress in a lightsaber duel despite having a broken arm. Anakin Skywalker once claimed to have heard that Plo Koon beat Yoda in a duel once, but the source on this is admittedly a little shady, so we aren't going to include it as an official feat. But we wanted to mention it for comprehension. We don't have a lot of specific instances of Plo Koon in solo duels, unfortunately, but we do know that he has received accolades for his saber prowess by many Jedi, including the likes of Tyvaka, Yoda, Qui-Gon Jinn, and even Darth Maul considered him only one of the few Jedi to be a suitable challenge, equating him in power to Mace Windu. But even if one were to disarm the Keldor master of his lightsaber, you were still in for a galaxy of hurt. Let's talk about the equally devastating use of Plo Koon's unarmed strikes. Plo Koon actually enjoyed hand-to-hand combat a great deal, throwing a man hard enough to break glass without killing him, smashing 2 thugs' heads together, and even straight up headbutting one of them. Plo Koon was a notable martial artist. The reason we mention all of this as being impressive is because Keldor have a naturally low constitution. This is shocking because they're prone to health problems when away from their homeworld, and their bodies are much softer than standard humans. Plo Koon overcomes this though, increasing his own durability and dexterity with the Force. Not only this, but he is a trooper even when gravely injured, bypassing pain for the sake of a mission. In his duel with Ventress, she would even deliver a kick right to his broken arm, and he shrugged it off. He was considered as good at force speed as Obi-Wan Kenobi was, employing it during his combat on many occasions. He was so fast that he would leave after images in unarmed combat. In one of my favorite feats, with his fists, he dismantled a small army of battle droids in the time that it took a trooper to say 3 words. And he competed with the assassin Aurra Sing in the Clone Wars. She had a rifle positioned right at his head at point-blank range, but the Keldor Master moved extremely quickly and cut the rifle in half. This would normally be very difficult for a Jedi to do against any trained bounty hunter, but Aurra Sing herself was force sensitive, and she had even received Jedi training. She had made a reputation and a habit of using her skills to kill Jedi for sport. The point being, she had that level of reflexes, and Plo basically embarrassed her. This moves to our last category, which is all of the esoteric Jedi skills that Plo Koon perfected. Having been trained by the Barandu sages, Plo Koon wasn't afraid to experiment with the light side. Knowing exactly where the line was drawn between light and dark in the Force gave him a huge advantage in doing this. He was able to use rare abilities such as Malacia, a power that allowed a Jedi to unbalance an opponent's equilibrium, to induce nausea, dizziness, sickness. He could also use Terminus against blaster bolts, as well as Force healing, which he used many times on injured clone troopers. He was known to use altar environment with water around in order to create a thick fog around a set area, or even create ice by lowering the atmospheric temperature. But we all know the ability that Plo Koon is talked about for: Electric Judgment, the Jedi variant of Force Lightning. This was an ability that Plo Koon figured out all by himself and perfected alone without any outside training. He first discovered the ability when he used it to incapacitate a criminal by the name of Pommel, which had kidnapped a small girl. Plo had been chasing him, and the criminal was dragging the girl back to his ship. This was a small excerpt from the passage in Jedi vs. Sith. Here, where Plo Koon is narrating from the Great Holocron, the event where he first used Electric Judgment. I know that the Jedi Council was hesitant to send me on any assignment so soon after the death of Master Tyvaka, but I did not let loose with Force Lightning the way undisciplined beings may release stress. Like other Jedi, I learned of Force Lightning at the Temple, and I am well aware that it is regarded as a dark side power. I never had any special interest in Force Lightning, or felt compelled to experiment with it whatsoever. But I knew it was, at very least in me, an innate ability. I did not feel any anger as I directed the lightning at Pommel's head, nor did I fear for the girl's safety. I was calm. I was in control of my faculties. I merely acted to end the situation before any more innocents died. Upon being struck with the first bolt, Pommel reacted as anticipated. It shocked him and seized his system. His arms flew out and away from his body, releasing both the blaster and the child who fell to the landing pad. A second bolt ensured that Pommel would remain unconscious until local authorities could arrive. I was never tempted to deal any sort of killing blow. This event was majorly controversial among the Jedi of the time. They told him to go meditate on the matter to see if he felt any shame of using this ability or what he wanted to achieve when he unleashed it. Plo Koon would do this, taking time to search within himself, and he believed that it would be a disservice not to cultivate the power and to use it for the light side. He was not tempted by the dark side when he used it, because it was born from a selfless need to see justice enacted. It was non-lethal, only meant to stun, but Plo would go on to perfect this power, being the first Jedi in the Order to properly do so, a power also used by Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. And with all of this, I can't help but feel that Plo Koon would have been an excellent addition to Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, as he is one of the most similar Jedi to Luke Skywalker in all of the lore. Their understanding of the light side is clearly unparalleled, and for Plo Koon, his understanding of the light side was clearly before his time. I think that Plo Koon, if Yoda ever stepped down, would have made for an excellent Jedi Grandmaster. But this was our respect and power to the individual, the great Jedi Master, the Keldor, Plo Koon. He would have been a perfect teacher, a perfect Jedi Knight after the Battle of Endor. But what do you think of Plo Koon, my friends? Did you know that he was this powerful, on the level of someone like Windu, or maybe even Yoda? And based on our knowledge, would you consider him to be on par with either of them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by the archives, and may the Force be with you.